So recently, the anti-vax folks have really been leveraging this paper to give it an "I gotcha" when it comes to COVID vaccines. However, this paper has a major flaw in the study design. I'm going to go through it like normal, but I want to see if you guys can pick it out. And I will tell you the answer when we get to it. So this was a global vaccine safety study that followed COVID vaccination from 10 sites across 8 countries, where they're focusing on the risk of adverse events of special interest, AESI, following COVID-19 vaccination, where they were considering data information recorded 42 days following vaccination for the 2 types of mRNA vaccination, so from Pfizer and Moderna, where in total there are over 99 million vaccinated individuals, where the conclusion of the study is that they confirmed the pre-established safety signals for myocarditis, pericarditis, Guillain-Barré syndrome, and cerebral venous sinus thrombus. We will retouch on that point later on, where the sites that participated in the study included Argentina, New South Wales, Victoria, Canada, British Columbia, Ontario, Denmark, Finland, France, New Zealand, and Scotland, where the study period spans from December 2020 until August 2023. And in their comparison for the adverse events of special interest following the COVID-19 vaccine, their control group is looking at 2015 to 2019 data from prior to COVID vaccines existing, and also prior to the start of the pandemic, as COVID started officially in about early December of 2019. And this part right here is the first hint in the major flaw in the study, where they then created an odds ratio by dividing the expected number of cases from the vaccination data from pre-COVID to the actual cases post-vaccination. And then this odds ratio is the crux of their conclusions, where they're then comparing the pre-COVID pre-vaccination adverse complication rate to the post-COVID post-vaccination complication rate, where red in this table would be high and bad, yellow would be bad, and then green is okay. So let's pause and think about where they went wrong. I'll give you 3 seconds. COVID infections. They are not controlling in this study for COVID infections. That is a major study flaw. Getting a COVID infection and then having this recent to the vaccination can cause issues, or getting a COVID infection following vaccination can also cause issues. And nowhere in this study did they track and segment the people that got COVID, an infection within the 11-month or 30-month time period that the study was done, and they didn't record how close that infection was to the vaccination itself, meaning that they're pooling people that are infected and vaccinated and uninfected and vaccinated together, which is why I emphasize that they're using their expected ratio, their expected number of cases from a pre-COVID, pre-vaccination data pool, and comparing this to a post-COVID and post-vaccination data pool. So at the high level, it's kind of humorous because they should know this, because the signals are myocarditis, pericarditis, Guillain-Barré syndrome, and cerebral venous sinus thrombosis. And what is something that can cause all those things? A COVID infection. This is called a confounding study variable, which is why the study design is always the most important thing. Just because you have 99 million people included in your study doesn't mean you have a good study. Because if you don't carefully control your variables and try to segment out everything in the knowns, such as knowing when a person gets a COVID infection and how that could influence the results of your study, then any conclusions drawn from that are going to be inaccurate. So even with this major study design flaw, when they're finding such low rates of adverse complications, we can then pretty safely assume that the safety profile of the vaccines is even greater than what's being reported here. So when we see these slightly elevated rates of hematologic conditions, so blood issues, elevated rates of cardiovascular issues, and these types of things are known complications of a COVID infection, because the study did not disentangle these things, it then makes it very difficult to even try and point it at the vaccine itself.